The next item on our agenda is the reading of the mission, and I'm going to take the liberty to do that. So Henrico County Public Schools, an innovative leader in educational excellence, will actively engage our students in diverse educational, social, and civic learning experiences that inspire and empower them to become contributing citizens. Thank you. I hope that will continue to guide our work. And the next item is the public forum, and we have a number of folks signed up, so let me kind of tell you how things are going to go, and then we'll get to that list. This is a time where citizens are invited to address the school board on any matter of concern about the school division. Some citizens have signed up in advance, and we will follow that list first. We will then allow anyone else who wishes to speak to come to the podium to do so after we've completed that list. We ask that each speaker come to the microphone and clearly state your name, neighborhood, or school affiliation. Once you've finished speaking, if you did not sign up in advance, we ask that you write your name and contact information on a sign-up form that's located on the table behind the microphone against that wall. To assist you in tracking your time, there's a timekeeping system on the podium. Speakers will have a 4-minute time limit. The light will be green as you begin your remarks. The yellow light means you have 1 minute remaining, and we ask that you promptly stop when the light turns red in recognition and respect of the other speakers. The school board is here tonight to hear from you, the community. Speakers should speak directly to the board and address your comments to the board. We will not be responding to speakers. However, someone from staff may follow up with you. We appreciate your attendance here this evening and providing your input. So, as I mentioned, we have 18 speakers. So what I'm going to do is call the first speaker and ask the second speaker, I'll call their name too, and just ask them to move to the front row so we can keep things moving along. Our first speaker is Mac Ross. Mac will be followed up by Brian Hinkst. I hope I've done that correctly. And if I mispronounce your name, I'll apologize in advance. So, Mr. Ross.
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Cashwell, board members-elect, and guests, my name is Mac Ross. I live in the Cross Keys neighborhood. Cross Keys is like the Valparaiso of the NCAA tournament. We are the perennial bubble neighborhood. With each redistricting and each map within those processes, we're either in or out depending on the day, only to find out on Selection Sunday whether we're secure at our neighborhood schools. When John Vitulkas was elevated to our county manager, he said, quote, "The manner in which our employees meet our customers' needs daily, consistently, over time defines us." He further stated that he has, quote, "witnessed many examples of our employees going beyond the ordinary, acts that can only be defined by an all-hands-on-deck approach, acts of bravery and personal sacrifice, acts within our general government, in our schools that are based on a principle of love of man and love of neighbor, acts that define a community," end quote. Mr. Vitulkas was defining what he refers to daily, and you all know, as the Henrico way. Henrico doesn't need to rely on outside consultants. Did you know at least 7 different county agencies have GIS programmers who together produce a high-tech interactive data mapping system? It rivals any locality in the country. There are county planners that guide and oversee the building of Short Pump, White Oak, Rockets Landing. As one of only 16 Tri-Arc accredited agencies in the world, yes, I said the world, our police division has traffic crash experts who can tell you where, why, and how traffic crashes affect commuters and safety. Just shy of 4,000 teachers put every one of our kids' education first every day. We have citizens willing to volunteer their expertise to fix a problem. Every one of these folks would do anything to complete this redistricting process. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Henrico way, the love of neighbor and community. It was indeed Matthew Cropper who told everyone at Wilder and Godwin that a student should not be affected by redistricting more than once. That makes it all the more concerning when at last week's elementary committee meeting, Matthew Cropper was asked for a list of neighborhoods affected by previous redistricting. He answered by saying, "That was 10 years ago, so those students aren't affected, and the families' households are irrelevant." Please take note of the word irrelevant. That's how a consultant employed by Henrico described your constituents again this past Monday when he uttered the same answer to the same question from the secondary committee, that families and households are irrelevant. Members of the board and members-elect, is that what Henrico County is to you? Irrelevant families and household? We all know the answer is an emphatic no. Every correspondence or robocall from our great principal, Dr. Slaughter, starts off the same way. Hello, Short Pump families. That's what our schools are made of, and that is who your constituents are, families. And what they are not is irrelevant. Matthew Cropper said it twice, so it was not lost in translation nor a misstatement. It's time to call this train wreck what it is, an expensive lesson, and more so, members of the board, it's time for us to wish Matthew Cropper well in his future endeavors and let Cropper GIS go. How can one out-of-state consultant divide this community and pit neighborhood against neighborhood the way it has gone so far? As Ms. Kinsella, Ms. Shea, and Ms. Atkins are installed as the newest members of our board, it's time for this new body, along with our veteran members, Reverend Cooper and Ms. Ogburn, to say what we are all screaming from this podium. We learned some lessons from Cropper. Thank you for your assistance, but we got this from here on out. We are not going to do this the Ohio way. We're going to do it the Henrico way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Our next speaker is Mr. Brian Mr. Hinks, and he will be followed by Yale Levin. I'm no doubt mispronouncing these names, and I apologize.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Cashwell, good evening. Roughly 1 year ago, my wife and I made the collective decision to join the 341 students and families of one of the most diverse elementary schools in the West End of Henrico. A school where half of the population is non-white, speaks more than 14 different languages, and represents 40 different nationalities and cultures. A school where nearly half of the students receive a free or reduced lunch, and has food drives to help fill the pantries of our population so they don't go hungry. A school that holds an annual function called International Night, where we come together to learn more about each other and celebrate our differences. Now, some may think it's hard to believe that such a diverse entity exists in the West End of Henrico, but I'm speaking of Crestview Elementary. A school that for decades has followed a well-established feeder pattern and has sent its graduates to populate the classrooms and halls of Tuckahoe Middle and Freeman High, and contributed to the understanding of what diversity means in this world that we ask our children to face. Put aside for a moment the fact that one of the proposed options puts the entirety of Crestview's population at Tucker. Rather, let's focus on the fact that none of the goals and none of the guidelines are being followed by putting Crestview's population into Tucker. Let me say that again. None of the goals that you, the board, has set forth, and none of the guidelines that Henrico has published are being followed when you take 350 students out of Crestview and place them into Tucker. Now, you could probably argue back and forth very valid points as to what constitutes a natural boundary or who could walk to school and who can't, what optimum school utilization percentages are or the safest route a bus could take to school. But what you can't argue is the continued need for diversity in our schools. And what you can't argue is the fact that the Crestview population for decades has brought much needed diversity to Freeman High, and if placed at Tucker, increases rather than decreases pockets of poverty at one location, rather than carrying on a long-established and successful feeder pattern that provides a valuable life lesson to Freeman students. A little over 10 years ago, the school board was faced with this very same scenario, the rezoning of Crestview to Freeman, or to Tucker. I don't know how many of you on the board sat during that time, but that board saw the value of diversity by keeping Crestview as a feeder to Freeman, along with the numerous other issues associated with such a move. My only ask to you, along with your successors, is to consider what Freeman becomes without Crestview. and recognize the value that diversity plays as part of this redistricting exercise. Keep diversity at Freeman, and keep Crestview at Freeman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Yael Levin. I hope I did that well, followed by Heather Walker. Heather Walker, if you would come down as well. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Reverend Cooper, Mazel Tov on your engagement. My name is Yael Levine Sheldon, and I live in Greenwood Glen. We are currently zoned for Greenwood Elementary, Hungary Creek Middle, and Glen Allen High. I have a 7th grader at Hungary Creek and a 5th grader at Greenwood Elementary. Our neighborhoods, Greenwood Glen, Magnolia Ridge, and River Mill, have submitted our feedback via the general feedback form and the survey. We have shown you our petition that lists how the current options violate the guidelines this board has set forth for this process. The current options not only do not meet the goals set forth, but they make our schools less diverse racially and socioeconomically. In spite of all of our feedback, no changes have been suggested to the maps to keep us at our current schools, even though Hungary Creek Middle is most likely the middle school that will be expanded. Several of us observed the December 4th elementary committee meeting and the December 9th secondary committee meeting. I personally observed the secondary committee meeting Monday evening, and I would like to share my observations. I saw committee members that appeared frustrated. I saw committee members suggest significant changes to the maps based on public feedback and new data, and Mr. Cropper dismissed these. I saw one committee member try to present alternative maps. Mr. Cropper discouraged him from doing so and from trying to influence other committee members. He was the only committee member that had the courage to say that well-performing schools can handle higher capacity, while struggling schools should remain below capacity. That committee member is a teacher at Glen Allen High School, so he's more than qualified to make such a statement. I saw another committee member ask Mr. Cropper to see data showing which neighborhoods were impacted in the redistricting 2 years ago and 10 years ago. Mr. Cropper dismissed her request. Some committee members expressed that they should really just worry about the West End situation because those were the loudest objections. Are we to understand from this that we need to be loud to be heard? Should we not stick with data, facts, and common sense? I saw a committee member suggest starting fresh to take into account public feedback and updated data. Mr. Cropper kept dismissing her, saying it was best practice to build off of the maps he provided the committee. Those maps were Mr. Cropper's goal for the new boundaries rather than current school boundaries, and therefore did not allow room for committee members to have an unbiased start. Committee members were only given 20 minutes to work on map changes, and we do not believe those changes to be anything more than cosmetic changes. Lastly, Mr. Cropper said that the survey responses were just a tool. It makes us feel that all of our public input isn't being considered. We recognize that the committee members are volunteers, and we appreciate their many hours of hard work. We also understand that we, the taxpayers of Henrico County, are paying the company of Mr. Cropper over $200,000 for this work, and he seems eager to want to move on to his next project. Let's let him do that. When we look at the numbers and consider that Hungary Creek Middle School will be expanded, it is clear that our 3 neighborhoods can and should remain at our current schools. It makes no sense to separate such a small percentage of our students from their peers when the enrollment trends for our current schools are declining and our middle school is being expanded due to being slightly over capacity. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, ma'am. So our next speaker is Ms. Walker, followed by Aiden Sheldon.
Oh, he's not coming.
Oh, Sheldon's not going to miss, okay.
My little one, he'll come in January.
Okay, good. We look forward to it. All right, and then Liam Sheldon, neither of the Sheldon. Okay, all right. Well, let's see about this next one then. Sanuthi? Yeah, thank you. Will you help me with your last name when you come forward? Just have a seat and we'll get you next. I'm sorry. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Cashwell, members of the school board, members of the school board-elect who are here tonight. My name is Heather Walker. I live in Greenwood Glen subdivision, which is near 295 and Woodman Road. Our neighborhood was built 20 years ago with Magnolia Ridge, which is very close by. We're deeply invested in our schools, Greenwood Elementary, Hungary Creek, and Glen Allen, and have built our community through them. Our two established neighborhoods, along with the new development nearby, have been shifted to Brooklyn Middle and Hermitage High on every map presented. I think we're nearing 6, close to 8, actually, of those. We seem to be the largest landmass area that is being moved in this redistricting process. Moving our neighborhoods separates our children from the community they have built at Greenwood Elementary at the most vulnerable school transition in the K-12 continuum, which is the 5th to 6th grade transition. As an educator, I can confidently say that's the hardest one. We do not have adequate representation in this process right now. As far as the redistricting committees go, we had 20 applicants from our neighborhoods and only one was chosen and then placed at the elementary committee. We have no one on the secondary committee who brings up our concerns. I've been to every committee meeting since October and can attest that our concerns are not discussed, no matter how much detail and data-driven feedback we try to submit. There is no one at the table who understands the unique and beautiful diversity and contributions of our group of homes and families. There is no one in a position to thoughtfully advocate or problem solve for us. Since October, I have attended every secondary committee meeting, both walkthroughs, and spoken to you all each month. Tonight, I'm missing a family event at my boys' school because I need you to hear how frustrated and disheartened I am. At the secondary committee this week, it was said that the addition that is currently recommended for Hungry Creek won't be official until the spring when you all vote on it, and that both that addition and the new elementary school are slated to open in 2022. Those two factors alone are reason enough to delay this redistricting. Tucker and Highland Springs are adding so few seats that although they are new, having them ready in 2021 does not greatly affect the redistricting process. The committee members seem to feel rushed as they ask about creating new maps and for numbers to be run for their new ideas. It makes no sense to me that this is happening right now. What's the rush? Please seriously consider putting it on hold for a year. New school board members will have had time to get to know and understand the needs of their communities. The new addition at Hungry Creek, assuming that's approved, and the new elementary school will have a more concrete timeline, making them a viable part of the planning and decision-making. Committee members should have the option to stay on board for the record because part of their concern was, oh my gosh, we've spent this many hours. And I admire them so much and I'm so grateful for what they've done. They should be able to stay on if they choose. Either way, this needs to wait. Oh, I should add, and we need a member on that committee, please. This needs to wait so that we aren't here again in 3 to 5 years. Continuity is essential for community building, and constant Band-Aids and changes disrupt that continuity. Children create their own community within their schools as they learn to be social creatures, not just in their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker, please, and please tell me how to pronounce your last name.
It's Nanayakara.
Okay, thank you so much. And she will be followed by Ashley Lewis, please. So please begin when you're ready.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sanuthi. I'm from Magnolia Ridge. I have a few concerns with the redistricting as someone who is going to be starting 10th grade in 2021 when this all happens. I have a few problems that I'm sure other people my age and will be able to relate with me, even if they change the year they do the redistricting. 9th grade is when you make your friend groups. You find people who have similar interests with you, and you also keep your friends from middle school. By switching us and moving us to 10th grade in Hermitage, you're separating us from our friends, people that in school have already found. People in that school have already found their friend groups, and we will be behind since it's only us. We will be separated by our classes, so we'll be even more lonely. And it will be the same no matter what. So if you're going to redistrict us, please consider giving the 10th graders the grandfather. And if you decide not to redistrict us, please decide not to redistrict us because even the people who have been here in our neighborhoods for a while deserve to stay with our friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Ms. Lewis, yes, thank you. Ms. Lewis will be followed by Ryan Burgess, please.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Lewis, and I live in River Mill. I'm very concerned with the lack of response to the strong opposition to this redistricting. Residents of Henrico County have been voicing opposition from many neighborhoods, and none of it is being considered. Why did Henrico County hire an out-of-town company to complete this redistricting? Was it to pass the buck and never own responsibility of this huge debacle? There's going to be 3 new board members who just recently finished their campaigns for election. It is not right to expect them to be able to make such a huge decision in just under 5 months. Has anyone spoken to or consulted with the teachers or principals yet? When I last spoke, I provided you direct information from the Brooklyn Middle School principal stating that he needed more resources to handle his current capacity. Therefore, we should not be adding more without providing that. Which brings me to my next concern. Teacher resource availability and pay, or lack thereof. Over $200,000 of our tax money is going towards someone who is poorly handling redistricting responsibilities. Teachers really could benefit from that over $200,000 in either form of increase in their pay or adding resources to help them better educate the students. We live in northwestern Henrico, the furthest away from other communities and schools. Our neighborhoods were just in a similar undesirable position in 2017. Now here we are again. We can almost always expect to be on the chopping block in every future redistricting because of this, which is unfair to our children to constantly shuffle them around every 2 to 3 years because Henrico County just won't build the much needed new schools to alleviate overcrowding. It feels like racial diversity is being pushed out of Hungry Creek Middle School and Glen Allen High School. I truly hope it is not to alleviate unrealistic concerns that we will wreck those schools. The great diversity and strong academic performance make both of these schools desirable. Taking away that diversity does nothing but further segregate and intensify poverty concentrations in already high poverty-stricken schools. With the great opposition from communities, new board members, and noted frustration among committee members, this redistricting really needs to be tabled and revisited once additions to schools are completed, new schools are finalized, and board members are well acclimated to all facts of this proposal. The county currently looks like they don't know what they're doing. As Oprah Winfrey once said, when you don't know what to do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ryan Burgess, followed by Janine Tuning, please. Yola.
Good evening, members of the school board, Dr. Cashwell, colleagues, and community stakeholders. My name is Ryan Burgess, and this is my 16th year teaching in Henrico County. I'm currently a teacher and HEA member at Highland Springs High School, and I would like to address you tonight on several systemic issues across the county. I am a highly educated, trained professional with graduate degrees in history and social work. As a teacher, every year it seems that the demands of my job increase while the financial compensation and time allotted stay the same. This year, the demands in Henrico have been particularly crushing. I am not here to complain or offer excuses. I am a dedicated teacher who loves their job and works hard to meet the ever-increasing requirements of my position. I am simply here to explain the realities of that experience. This year has been quite different from other years. Everyone knows teachers are busy. We construct our lesson plans and materials, teach, grade, and assess our students, communicate with parents, and pursue professional development. However, this year we are being told to record our lesson plans weekly, to increase the number of grades we record per marking period, to administer, grade, and track student growth measures, benchmarks, and performance task data. We teach digital citizenship lessons and the HLP and deeper learning model. On a weekly basis, we compare strand data, track tier 1 to 3 students, record parent phone calls in a spreadsheet, complete 9-page Google Forms for 1 disciplinary referral. Within all of this, we are expected to be on pace and to respond promptly to numerous emails, phone calls, and Google Form surveys. That's over 20 items that we are required to complete in addition to our job teaching the children of Henrico County in our 1.5 hour planning blocks. I am also trying to teach my students. I work very hard to meet the needs of every learner through engaging lessons, attending IEP meetings, spending many hours on professional learning activities, following IEPs to the letter, meeting ESL accommodations, buying copy paper to supplement the one box of paper we are given a semester, as well as other resources, and by being a supportive listener, mentor, counselor, and historical expert. Again, I love my job, our vision as a district, and the work I do. I would, however, like to be free to do my job without unreasonable constraints. Please trust me to do my job. The red tape and the meaningless, time-consuming bureaucratic paperwork and data-driven activities need to abate, or we need to be given more time and financial compensation to do them. As administrators and school board members, please work with us and not against us to help us do our jobs. As education historian and scholar Diane Ravitch stated, you don't improve education by demoralizing the people who have to do the work every day. I'd just like to close by saying that we can do incredible things in Henrico County as teachers, but we can't do them when we're buried under paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Burgess. Thank you. Simone Robinson, would you come forward, please, after Janine? Simone Robinson, thank you. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Cashwell, guests, colleagues. My name is Janine Schuning. I am the president of the Henrico Education Association, and I'm speaking for myself and my colleagues. But first, I'd like to thank the outgoing members of the board, Mrs. Koch, Mr. Montgomery, and Mr. Pike. Thank you very much for helping us advance our mission to make teaching and learning in Henrico County the best it can be. Thank you for listening to us and being available to us when we needed you over the years. We really appreciated it. But I'm here to reiterate what Ryan said. Teachers are suffering. We are stressed. We are maxed out. And the sentiments I'm sharing tonight are modeled after remarks made by Sojourner Truth, an abolitionist and feminist who delivered her famous speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" in 1851. That man over there says teachers don't have a plan unless he sees a plan, graphed and charted, with color-coded columns and SOL numbers and letters, clothing each standard like a prison uniform. Nobody ever asks if these lesson plans help my students or make me better or mean anything at the end of the day. Ain't I a teacher? Look at me. Look at my face, laugh lines and frown lines coexisting, a testimony to every achievement and failure in my classroom. I've spent years with a pen in my hand, blue, pink, green, purple, never red, commenting and grading and hoping each word will get them one step closer. I have counseled and cried and consoled hundreds, and no lesson plan can account for it. Ain't I a teacher? I could write more lesson plans, crank them out on the conveyor belt of public education, and smother the anger all the while. And ain't I a teacher? I've taught over 2,000 students and seen many of them raise families, start businesses, publish books, become CEOs. None because of a lesson plan I submitted. And ain't I a teacher? Thank you.
And after Ms. Robinson, Sanab Bowens. I know I did that wrong. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, members of the board, and thank you so much again for listening to me again this evening. I promise not to take up any space in January. I'm also hoping that by January, our voices will truly be heard. In the time since I've been here last, I've seen and heard some of our voice seemingly being diminished, from comments that have seemed to disappear to the way that delivered the concerns to the hardworking committee members who are working on our behalf. To me, that is unseemly. It is magnified when this process that has received so much opposition is not realistically reconsidered, reworked, and then considered again. For it is our very smallest stakeholders who have to worry about the redistricting more than parents, more than teachers, more than any of you guys, more than any of the folks sitting here, more than newspapers. They have to bear the burden of a rushed process. Also, well, you've already heard about the $230,000. That seems like a whole lot of money. You've heard it 3 times. You heard it when I walked in the door. I won't even bother to belabor that point. But I am asking that we take a beat, that you consider taking a moment for something that is so important, and again, to our smallest stakeholders, that we really reconsider and consider, and then consider again what we're asking them to do, to leave their communities, to go into a new community. We're asking them to bear the brunt of loneliness. We're asking them to reform communities. And yes, children are resilient, but adults should be measured. And in this instance, it doesn't seem as though we are using all of our voices to reconsider what has received so much opposition. Like I said, I won't take up too much of your time, and I promise, can't promise my son won't be here, but I won't be speaking in January. So again, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. After Ms. Bowens, our next speaker will be Chandler Cox.
Good evening. My name is Zainab Yusafi Bowens, and I live in Rivermill, and Greenwood is our elementary school. I'm a single mother of a rising kindergartner. I migrated to America from the Middle East in 1982. Shortly thereafter, my young mother abandoned our family and left my blue-collar father to raise 2 very young children in a brand new country where we knew no one and did not know the language. We grew up very poor in Virginia Beach. However, we were lucky in that we happened to be one of the lower class neighborhoods districted for highly rated public schools that consisted of predominantly high achieving students. Because of this opportunity at a great education, I made it into college and have since made a career and life for myself. I spent most of my adult life living in the city of Richmond. I struggled to get where I am today and am fortunate to have been able to recently purchase a townhome in Rivermill in Glen Ellen. The main reason I purchased in Rivermill was to afford my daughter the opportunity to attend the schools we are currently zoned for: Greenwood Elementary, Hungary Creek Middle, and Glen Ellen High School. Today I am speaking for Rivermill, Greenwood Glen, and Magnolia Ridge. Both redistricting options have us moving to Brooklyn Middle and Hermitage High. We ask that you delay this redistricting, at least for the Fairfield Glen Ellen area, for the following reasons. The new Rivermill Elementary School will be ready in the fall of 2022. We should wait until we see how that will impact feeder patterns. Second point, the Hungary Creek Middle School expansion of 200 new seats will be ready in the fall of 2022. That should suffice to accommodate keeping our neighborhoods at Hungary Creek. Our 3 neighborhoods together will have a total of only 206 middle school students, most of whom are already attending Hungary Creek and are already accounted for capacity-wise. In addition, enrollment trends for Hungary Creek and Glen Ellen High School are decreasing. The proposals have us moving to Brooklyn Middle School and Hermitage High School, but more than 500 units by Telegraph Road called Retreat at 1 are being built and zoned for Brooklyn and Hermitage. That alone could put Brooklyn over capacity when it is an already struggling school, and will greatly increase capacity at Hermitage, which is also struggling academically. Keeping our 3 neighborhoods at our current schools will help alleviate increased enrollment trends for Brooklyn Middle School and Hermitage High School. We, Rivermill, Greenwood Glen, and Magnolia Ridge, are the diversity at our current schools. Both option A and B fail to fulfill the county's goal of creating an equitable balance between all the schools in the county. Instead, under both options, Hungary Creek Middle School would lose approximately 13% of its economically disadvantaged students, and its demographic would skew from medium poverty to low poverty. It would also become less racially diverse, losing about 6% of its African American student population. Under both options, Glen Ellen High School would lose more socioeconomic equity, and both economically disadvantaged and African American students would be grossly underrepresented in the student body. We feel that there is an effort to make Hungary Creek and Glen Allen wider and more affluent by pushing out our racially and economically diverse neighborhoods. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Chandler Cox, will be followed by Jeff Britt.
Hello, my name is Chandler Cox and I am in 5th grade at Greenwood Elementary School. I live in Magnolia Ridge. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like for the board to please reconsider redistricting our neighborhood from Hungary Creek Middle and Glen Allen High. I want to continue middle school with all my friends. If we are redistricted, I will only have a couple of friends going with me, and Brooklyn Middle is a huge school. In addition, it is not fair that I would have to start middle school twice, as I would be doing 6th grade at Hungary Creek and then having to start again at Brooklyn Middle. Middle school is scary, and starting it twice is much scarier. I would like to add that right now, we get visits from Hungary Creek and Glen Allen High students. They are acting as our mentors. We don't know anyone at Brooklyn and Hermitage. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeff Britt, who will be followed by Josh Gressenbach.
Good evening. Jeff Britt, live in the Pinedale Farms neighborhood in the West End. I'm here tonight on behalf of more than 600 residents that have signed a petition to keep the Pemberton corridor at Freeman High School. There are 8 neighborhoods along Pemberton Road that are impacted, about 130 high school age kids. Both options being considered would move our students to Tucker High School, and we're fighting to stay at Freeman. I attended the secondary committee meeting Monday night too, and left incredibly discouraged about this entire redistricting process. Mostly, I was discouraged at how the committee seemed to care very little about the volumes of public comment received at recent meetings and through the online survey. Matt Cropper did give a PowerPoint presentation with a summary of results, but there's no way the committee was able to digest all that information and then jump right into marking up maps. But they did anyway. It didn't appear the committee gave much mind to any of the hot spots, as we've been referred to as, or the fact that a majority of survey respondents dislike or oppose both options. 55% dislike or oppose option A, and 75% of respondents dislike or oppose option B. The survey results are pretty compelling. There is widespread opposition to these maps that arbitrarily move thousands of students for the sake of moving students. There was one committee member who spoke up and suggested a guiding principle of their work should be to limit student disruption. He clearly had looked at the data and considered public feedback because he showed up having developed his own maps that minimized the movement of students unnecessarily. It kept communities like Raintree and Church Run and the Pemberton Corridor at their current high schools. Of course, his logic was immediately shot down. Several committee members seemed offended that he had taken the initiative to create his own maps. They also questioned his rationale to limit student disruption. One committee member actually said, and I quote, "Why can't we move kids around? That's why we're here." Unbelievable. Is that really the point of all this? To move kids for the sake of moving kids? That was my takeaway from being at that meeting on Monday night. There was also a committee member who brought up hearing from several people that some areas of the county have been rezoned as recently as 10 years ago. Yeah, that's us. The Pemberton Corridor was rezoned last time, and kids were moved from Godwin to Freeman. Now, if we are moved again, Tucker would be our third high school in just 10 years. This lady asked Cropper for data to know how many areas have been moved in recent years. He dismissed the notion and said it doesn't matter. High school lasts 3 to 5 years. Not many students will be impacted by moving again. Really, because I've lived along Pemberton Road for 10 years, and this is my third redistricting fight. I have 4 kids who will be in school over a 9-year stretch. It does matter to me, and it does have an impact. I can think of a dozen other families in my neighborhood that will be impacted and split by this decision. I'm sorry to take up time tonight speaking on redistricting. It's not on the agenda, but I couldn't speak at the committee meeting the other night. So I'm here tonight, and I'm telling you the process is flawed. The committee is misguided. We're moving too fast. The committee is making uninformed, arbitrary decisions that will impact thousands of students and their families. We can do better. We need your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Josh Grusenbach. I may have the wrong. Is Josh here? All right. Then Jennifer Andrews, who will be followed by Melinda, this is handwritten, Winterhalter, I hope. Okay, good.
Oh, sorry. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the school board, Dr. Cashwell, colleagues and guests. Jennifer Andrews, Henrico resident and teacher, speaking on behalf of the Henrico Education Association. Since this is the last monthly meeting of the current term for school board members, we want to express our appreciation to you for all the hard work you put into serving Henrico as school board members. I know most people have no idea how much you actually do. Mrs. Ogburn and Reverend Cooper, you will be returning to your seats in January. Mr. Montgomery, Mrs. Koch, and Mr. Pike, your term of service is ending. Mr. Pike, your service as a school board member is the shortest of any board member at 14 months, but you spent years as an educator in Henrico. Mrs. Koch, you are an active representative of your district, having served 8 years on the school board. Mr. Montgomery, you have served on the Henrico School Board for 12 years, longer than anyone here. I remember that I first met you when you first ran for school board. You have worked with the HEA on many issues over the years, and we appreciate all that you have done. I have a small token of appreciation for each of you leaving the school board. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And I'll speak for the others and tell you it has been a real pleasure, and HEA is a partner in holding us accountable and advocating and supporting, and so it's greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. I do remember we worked on bi-monthly pay. There were a number of issues and many more issues left to be worked on, so your work is not done here. Our next speaker is Melinda Winterhalter, thank you, who will be followed by Nathan Lash, please.
Good evening. I live in the Monumental Floor Gardens neighborhood in the Crestview area. Crestview is a unique and special area. It is one of the most culturally diverse pockets in Henrico County and has always been recognized and celebrated for this. Sometimes cultural diversity also impacts socioeconomic diversity, as many families find it hard to locate work when they have immigrated here, but have not yet learned the English language. I know this firsthand as I am an adult ESL teacher. I spoke to the board last month about the socioeconomic statistics based off of free lunch recipients at Crestview. I want to reiterate this information as it seems some of the redistricting committee members are neglecting to consider poverty statistics when they are making changes to the current draft A and B at Monday's committee meeting. Crestview Elementary is a small school that feeds into Freeman with only 341 students, and 43% of these students are on the free lunch program. The largest elementary school that feeds into Freeman is Tuckahoe Elementary with 644 students, providing just 4.6% free lunches. Freeman has 27.6 students on free lunch program, and Tucker 42.6 students on free lunches. To remove Crestview from Freeman and place Crestview into Tucker removes socioeconomic and cultural diversity from Freeman and increases Tucker's concentration of poverty. Information also pertaining to the current map drafts are this. Map A removes Pinchbeck Elementary School from Godwin and places it into Freeman. Map B removes Pinchbeck and parts of Carver Elementary School from Godwin to place into Freeman, and then puts Crestview into Tucker. Issues with this are that both Pinchback and Carver provide socioeconomic diversity to Godwin. Pinchback provides 40.4% free lunches, Carver 44.6%, and Godwin only provides 14.1% free lunches. Why impact these three areas, Crestview, Pinchback, and Carver, when they are socioeconomically beneficial to their currently assigned high schools? I also want to say I was thankful that Mr. Davis from Pupil Transportation spoke at Monday's meeting, as he reiterated the fact that the quickest route from my house to Tucker is going down Broad Street to Interstate 64, as this was the bus route example that he gave. The car accident statistics on this stretch of Broad Street are 67 crashes in 2017 and 68 crashes in 2018. The crash statistics on Interstate 64 in this stretch are 110 in 2017 and 65 in 2018. I'm sure our experienced bus drivers can handle this obstacle course that rush hour traffic ensues on these roads, but this is a huge safety concern for new and inexperienced drivers. I know any redistricting efforts have difficult decisions to be made. There are so many areas of valid concerns it can be overwhelming deciding which one to prioritize as you want to adhere to the Henrico County guidelines and criteria. I hope you're able to see the validity in the above points, and I encourage you all to attend the redistricting committee meetings to observe the flawed process that takes place there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. So next speaker is Mr. Lash, and Mr. Lash will be followed by Candace Lucas, please. Ms. Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Cashwell, school board members-elect. Thank you for listening and appreciate the platform we're given to express our concerns around this redistricting process. As mentioned, my name is Nathan Lash, a resident of Monumental Floral Gardens, Libby in the Willow Lawn area, and I have two children in Henrico County Schools, a fourth grader at Crestview and an eighth grader at Tuckahoe. Our current pattern is Crestview, Tuckahoe, and Freeman. One of the proposed options have my children moving from Freeman to Tucker High School. The current route for traveling to Freeman currently is Monument Avenue to Three Chopped, a pleasant, safe route for buses and our new drivers. If moved from Freeman, this route would turn my 16-year-old daughter traveling on Broad Street to Interstate 64 during rush hour traffic both to and from school. Our children would not only be crossing Broad Street once, but traveling on that road for several miles through heavily congested intersections and transitioning to an interstate where speeds average well north of 70 miles an hour. This spells disaster, and no parent in my community wants our children on that route. At the present time, myself and my wife are responsible for both my kids' transportations to school. We have to pass Freeman to get to Tuckahoe Middle. For those who don't know, these two schools are located within a few hundred yards of each other. Tucker is miles in the opposite direction, not yards, but miles. This would be another huge inconvenience for parents, and more time in the car for young drivers would also potentially help in transporting of siblings. My children have been also through two school renovations, both Crestview and Tuckahoe Middle, and have been educated in temporary trailers and around construction for years. Now, if moved from Freeman, my daughter would have yet another disruption, having to leave so many friends and teammates behind to start over to school, which no one can guarantee that she won't be back in a construction zone in trailers again. She would attend Freeman for 1 year and then move to Tucker for ultimately 2 freshman years. Has anyone evaluated the numerous impacted students and how these disruptions could negatively impact education and mental health as they prepare for college and the rest of their lives? By altering our current pattern and removing Crestview from Freeman, this will nearly remove all diversity out of Freeman High School. Having a diverse atmosphere helps prepare our children for real life. I feel it's crucial for our children to live and learn with children from all socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds. Not to mention, within less than 2 miles of my home, there are 10 different denominations of churches and places to worship. Crestview brings diversity that Freeman needs and requires. This impacted diversity level should be looked at carefully, as this would transform Freeman against one of the guiding principles not only to Henrico County Public Schools, but as a society in general. We are being targeted again for redistricting like we were years ago. Why disrupt this tight-knit, well-balanced community and put our children in added harm's way? I know of no new houses being built. No new neighborhoods are planned in my community. Myself and my neighbors are being unfairly targeted again during this redistricting process because of growth and expansion in the far west end. Crestview is a crucial part of Freeman, and Freeman needs Crestview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Ms. Lucas, who will be followed by Tiffany Brown. Ms. Brown will be our next speaker after Ms. Lucas. That's fine.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Brown. I have something I would like for you to. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Brown. I'm a parent of a student that used to attend Howland Springs Elementary School. I have something I want you guys to, each one of you can take one of those. Tonight, I come to voice my concerns about my child's pre-K experience at Henrico County Elementary School, which is Howland Springs Elementary School. Starting on her first day, September 3rd, 2019, which is technically the first day of school, my child being placed in seclusion and restraints. She's in a pre-K program. She's 5 years old, and this was her first educational experience. The seclusion and restraints continued, unbeknownst to me, on many other occasions. I counted 14 from some things that we received. However, as a result of that, I have removed my child from that school, and she calls Howland Springs Elementary School the school with the jail room in it. She's afraid to go there. She's pretty much afraid of any educational institution at this time. And she's also afraid of our local police officers. If we're in the grocery store, she will state that, oh, Mom, they're gonna take me to jail. She's 5 years old. On October 21st, I had enough of trying to talk to administrators, individuals about her teacher and the things that was taking place in the classroom, and no one would listen to me. I sent an email 2 days later, and I want to read you this email. I gave each one of you a copy on the 23rd. And this is just to give you a little foundation of what I experienced, because this was 2 days after I took her out. I hadn't officially unenrolled her, but she wasn't there. Okay, so as I wrote, I said, hello, everyone, and I addressed this to Ms. Cynthia Brand Parker, Donna Hopkins, and Sonia Tolliver. Those were the three individuals that I sent this to. Those are the three people that I had the most communication with in this process, okay? So I said, hello, everyone. As you all know, I've spent the last 3+ weeks in Rakalia's classroom observing. I took off work. I filed FMLA for my child's safety, to see what was going on in that classroom, to protect my job and to see what was going on with my daughter, and they all were well aware of it. So I spent the last 3+ weeks in the classroom observing what was planned time off to help my child in her educational transition, as also to educate her teacher on her auditory hyper-responsivity to common environmental factors in the school, of which crying is one of Rakalia's major triggers, sometimes resulting in maladaptive behaviors in an attempt to flee or avoid them, but not the reported safety concerns as they were trying to say. So number one, I've witnessed, and I also, this was what the things that I've witnessed in those 3 weeks that I was there. I witnessed Ms. Sawyer, that was the teacher that was supposed to educate my child, but she traumatized her. I witnessed Ms. Sawyer deny my child a straw in the cafeteria, resulting in her falling on the floor, and, you know, she's 5. She wants a straw to drink her juice. And she walks away from her.
Ms. Brown, thank you. Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing the other material that you previously shared with us.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Lucas, please. And if there's anyone else who wishes to speak, if you'd move down to the front row and be prepared to do so, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name, once again, is Candace Lucas. I am a parent of a student that attends Seven Pines Elementary. I'm a parent of a student who graduated from Henrico County Public Schools. I'm a licensed educator and administrator. I'm also a activist that looks to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. I wanted to tell you something, Dr. Cashwell. You speak equity. There can be no equity until there is justice. You cannot have equity until you address the issue of injustice. And for some reason, we don't want to address that in this county. John, 12 years ago, I helped you get elected. And I've regretted it every day of my life since that time. You have not been responsive to the needs of the individuals and families in Verina. You won't even return a phone call to help our kids. So I'm happy that you're transitioning out, but you've left a mess for Alicia to clean up. So I need you to know that as well. In addition, I want to talk about the issue of this parent coming up. So many times we want to make out the claim that no one is going through the protocol. We have deadbeat staff members who don't want to listen to our families. We have individuals like Mr. Hall, who's over the elementary schools, who covers up child abuse and has done it since he was a principal of black boys and black girls. I'm not saying what you guys don't already know. He wrote it in an email, and y'all promoted him after he wrote it. Yeah, I covered up the abuse. So let's talk about the fact that we're not keeping our kids safe. And this board has a lot of work to do. The next board that's coming up, I'm excited about it, because hopefully we'll get some people who authentically care about our children and don't just talk the talk, but really do so. Dr. Cashwell, you know I know you from Virginia Beach, and it was a hot mess down there, and it's a hot mess here. No matter how much we put up about how wonderful Henrico is, which it does have some great attributes. I wouldn't have my own child in the system. All I can say is that we are not doing right by the least of these, the ones who really have no one to speak for them. I looked at this teacher who has allocated rationed a box of paper a month or whatever. That is disgraceful when you are paying the Reed Smith law firm $1,200 an hour to come after me. $1,200 an hour. You spent $225,000 in federal court to protect your right not to educate a black child who needed it. Dr. Cashwell, you must do better. You have two girls. What if someone paid $225,000 to deny your children an education? You'd be livid. So don't get mad because I'm mad. Because if you're not mad about what's going on with our kids, something is wrong with you, not me, if you're not mad. Now, I'm going to close out by stating that, Ms. Koch, you said it right. If you don't leave something better than when you came, then you've done a disservice. And unfortunately, this school board as it stands has left Henrico worse than when you came in. Almost 11 years ago today, I appeared first before this school board. I've been to more school board meetings than anybody on the board. And I expect to keep coming to them. And I'm going to be your conscience, and I'm going to hold you accountable. Reverend Cooper, this mother came to you for help. You didn't even call her back. What if that was your black child locked in that room? You didn't even call her back. As a black man, you should be ashamed, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Lucas. Again, your time is up.
Thank you. You didn't tell me the first time.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
You didn't tell me the first time. I'd like to have a comment.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Well, very good.